Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Law of Business podcast, where I interview entrepreneurs that can help you to start and grow your business. I'm your host, Jamil Jama, and today we're going to be talking about everybody or most people's favorite thing, which is movies. Well, I love movies anyway, and I'm sure you probably love movies as well. Most people love movies anyway. And I'm going to be interviewing Nell Minow, aka the Movie Mum. Her nickname is Movie Mum. Nell Minow does movie reviews with a parent's eye. And Nell Minow appears every week on radio stations across the country talking about new releases on theaters and on DVD, and has over 3,000 movie reviews at moviemum.com. Wow, 3,000 movie reviews, that's a lot. But I'm more surprised about DVDs. Are they still being used?
They are, absolutely. And fancier than ever. Now they have DVDs with all kinds of extra fancy packages that come with wheels on and holograms on them and all of that, just so that people will still buy non-digital media.
Okay, so DVDs are still being used. I haven't watched a DVD since 2000 and, I can't remember, 2011?
Mm-hmm.
Because everything's digital now. A lot of things are digital now. Because of
a lot of things, but not everything.
Netflix and Amazon Prime.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan of Netflix, to be honest. I prefer Amazon Prime.
I have them both. I love them both.
I've got nothing against Netflix. I just prefer Amazon Prime.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with Netflix. I just prefer Amazon Prime. I'm an Amazon fan, basically. But yeah. So Nell Minow, thank you so much for coming on the show to do this interview. I appreciate this so much.
It's my pleasure, Jamil.
And Nell Minow, before we get to the movies and what movies all entrepreneurs must watch, can you first tell us your story, please, from when you started until where you are right now?
Okay. Well, I've always loved movies ever since I was a child, and I reviewed movies for my high school and college papers and studied film in college. But then I went to law school and did other things for quite a long time, and occasionally still wrote about movies. When the internet came along, I had young children, and I used to go to the video store, if you remember the days of the video store, and I would see parents looking dazed and confused as they stared at the new releases shelf, unable to tell what was appropriate for their families. And I thought, I could start a website and do movie reviews from a parent's eye and get back into doing something that I love. So I started doing that in 1995 when there was not a single corporation or publication on the web. There was really mostly people writing from army bases and college dorm rooms. And so by the time that companies like Yahoo came along, I already had quite a substantial number of reviews online. Yahoo asked me to be their critic. Now, during the same time, I had become an entrepreneur myself and begun the first of 4 companies that I would start with the same business partner. And as we sold each one, we would spin off a little bit of the old one and start a new one with it, like a bunch of Russian dolls, And so I've always been not just very interested in movies, but very interested in entrepreneurship and in corporate governance. I've written several books about both, about movies and about corporate governance. And so I'm delighted to have an opportunity to talk to you to bring together both of my areas of interest.
That's fantastic. So you was also an entrepreneur, which is awesome. You don't just do movie reviews. You had 4 businesses, right?
Well, I had 4 businesses with the same partner, but also 2 on my own. I mean, the Movie Mom is a business in and of itself. I started it just as fun. But once I had a substantial number of reviews online, then Yahoo brought me on to be their film critic. I got book contracts. I went on the radio. So I think of that as an entrepreneurial venture. And then I started a publishing company a few years ago. I've published 35 books. And so that was another company that I've started.
That's awesome. Congratulations. 35 books. That's
35 books so far.
So far. You still plan to do more?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So was you born into an entrepreneur family? Was your mother and father entrepreneurs? Was you an entrepreneur?
Not at all. Not at all. My father is an extremely successful, accomplished lawyer who has worked with 5 different presidents and started the Presidential Debates Commission that is, he's still vice chair of it at age 92, that does all of the presidential debates. So you could say that he's entrepreneurial in that way, but in terms of his career, he's just been a lawyer. His father was an entrepreneur, started a very successful business as an immigrant, came to the United States really with very little education and started a business, became very successful. So I have a little bit of that in my background.
So what made you get into entrepreneurship? Was it, because I know schools don't teach this.
I really lucked out. I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur at all. My business partner, who's been my guide through all of this, has been a wonderful mentor, told me something very important. He said, everybody has a different tolerance level for ambiguity. And if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you need to have a tremendous amount of tolerance for ambiguity in your professional life. And I had never thought about that before, but I really did. And I had been working for the government for the first 8 years after I graduated from law school. I loved it, loved working for the government. I'm here in Washington, D.C., where it's very exciting, a lot of stuff going on here. And really what made me leave was that I was having children. I had 2 children and I wanted to work part-time. And being an entrepreneur gave me an opportunity for more flexibility over my schedule. And as each company got very successful and demanded more of my time, we would sell it and start a new one. Because I found out I really liked the startup part of it better than the operational part of it.
Yeah. I've had jobs and I've had businesses as well. And jobs were a lot easier. Would you agree? Entrepreneurship is a lot harder, I think.
Entrepreneurship is a lot harder, but it's a lot more fun. If it suits your personality, which it does mine.
And you can choose what you want to do, and it's definitely more fun. You grow more as well. There's no limit to the growth.
Well, there's a tremendous amount of challenges. You know, I'm a little bit ADD, attention deficit, and I get bored easily. So if I don't have new challenges coming at me all the time, I get very bored. So I have to learn something new all the time. And so a lot of people like to do the same thing every day, and God bless them, we need them. But for me, it's been fun to do new things.
Definitely. And with jobs, there's like a limit, because not everybody can be the manager. The highest is like the manager, and the manager ain't going nowhere. So you don't get promoted there. But with entrepreneurship, there's no limit to how much you can grow.
Right. But I found, for example, with my first company, which is now a very big multinational company, but I was the 4th person hired. I found with that company, I learned an important lesson, which is that no matter what you do, the 25th person that you hire is never going to be as vitally engaged as the 10th person that you hire. It's just a different kind of person who wants to join an established company from one who's excited by the idea of a startup. And all of a sudden, when the 25th person comes in, they say, do we have a credit union and what's our policy on this? Whereas the first, 19 who come in the door are, how are we going to create the world today? And so you have to it's very difficult and very challenging to try to maintain a sense of entrepreneurship as the staff gets larger.
Mm. Okay, that's awesome. So, Nell Minow, going back to the movies now, I've watched quite a few entrepreneur movies. I need to watch more.
Well, I'm sure I'm going to surprise you with some of my choices, but tell me some of the ones that you've seen.
Some of the ones I've seen, the first one I saw it's called The Billionaire. Mm-hmm. It's about a Thai guy. It wasn't even in English. There was English subtitles.
Okay.
There was a Thai boy who became a billionaire at a very young age. He started his own company selling, I think, crisps or chips in supermarkets, and basically there was loads of obstacles in his way, and it looked like he wasn't going to make it, but in the end he made it, and he became very successful. He's a billionaire now. It's based on a true story. It's from Thailand. Okay. That's one of the movies, and obviously other movies which is based on personal development, like Limitless. Okay. Etc. Even James Bond, I would say that's entrepreneurship as well. James Bond. Because he's going to all the nice places. And
he still works for the government.
Yeah, but he's going to all the nice places and.
Yeah, he still works for the government.
Okay, that's probably not, but yeah, my favorite one so far is the one is called The Billionaire, which is about a Thai kid who was young, he was 19, became very rich. He became a billionaire.
Okay.
It's based on a true story. You can people can Google that. People can Google that. Or I'll leave a link to that actually.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite movies based on entrepreneurship. Nell, I know you probably have many, but what's the best entrepreneur movie you have ever watched?
Well, the best I ever watched is a 1954 movie called The Solid Gold Cadillac. And that was originally a hit Broadway play. And to show you the difference between a play and a movie, in the play, the main character is supposed to be a little old lady. In the movie, she's played by a beautiful young blonde actress. So that's the difference. But if you watch the first 10 minutes of the movie, which I often show to students when I'm speaking to business schools about corporate governance, if you watch the first 10 minutes and you added 4 or 5 zeros to every number that they talk about in the annual meeting of a big conglomerate that is the opening scene of the film, it would still be very valid today. The movie is about a woman who has only 10 shares of stock, who goes to an annual shareholder meeting, or what you call an AGM, I guess, and stands up and says, why are we paying the CEO so much? It seems like a lot. And what is this mix of assets about? And I'd like to ask some questions. And so what they do is they're so annoyed at her temerity in asking these questions, they think that they will shut her up by giving her a job, a meaningless job of being in charge of the small shareholders. And she starts to write to the small shareholders as they get up to all kinds of corporate misdeeds, and it's about what happens then. And the issues that it deals with are all completely the same issues that we see in large conglomerate corporations today. So that is the one that I always say is my favorite, and it's the one that when my children were young, I showed them and said, this is what mommy does at the office, because I have worked on the shareholder side. And then it seems to me, as I was looking over the list that I wanted to talk to you about today, most of the movies that deal with business or that deal with the kinds of issues that you see in business are cautionary tales. They are not, I'm just going to say, having not seen the movie The Billionaire, fairy tales, because that's a Cinderella story. Whether it's a true story or not, it's a Cinderella story. And we don't know what makes somebody tremendously successful. We don't know the real story. But that's the kind of story that, that's somebody where they go to the ball and marry the prince. And those are great stories, and they're enduring and they're important. But I think that we learn more from looking at the mistakes of others, especially the real stories. And so another one that I recommend to business students all the time is a movie based on a real life story, the largest bank embezzlement in the history of Canada, with Philip Seymour Hoffman and Minnie Driver, in the story of a bank vice president who embezzled money from a trust account. And what's particularly interesting about that movie, and I especially recommend it to students who are studying accounting and auditing, is that the movie makes it absolutely clear that every single person in the story is evaluating risk all the time. Some of them are doing it better than others, but that's exactly what they're all trying to do. So from the very first scene, where the bank turns down one of its biggest customers for a loan because for some reason they think that she's not a good risk, even though she has an enormous account at the bank, toward the end, as the Royal Canadian Mounted Police are trying to decide whether they have enough information to go ahead and arrest the guy, by the way, I should mention what he did with the $20 million that he embezzled. He lost every penny of it gambling, every single penny. He didn't buy a house, a car, present for his girlfriend, nothing. So the manager of the casino knew full well that anybody dressed like that and acting like that didn't really have $20 million. So he's assessing risk. Is it worth it to him to have this guy continue to lose money there, knowing that he's probably not on the level? And it's really the only time that a casino itself has ever been held liable for negligence, because they should have known that he was not using his own money. So it's a very, very interesting movie. It's called Owning Mahowny, and I like that one a lot. Then I'm just going to mention one more, sort of as a counterpoint to your billionaire example. And it's about another real life billionaire, and that is Jobs. There are a couple of movies about Steve Jobs.
I've watched that one as well. I've watched that one.
Yeah. So I
watched that on Netflix.
Good. Well, that's the one. The second one is the one that I like the most, and it just looks at him at three different points at his career as he's making three different product announcements. So it doesn't try to cover his whole life like the first one with Ashton Kutcher. And I thought it raised a lot of issues very, very well. I have a bunch more, so let me know what more you would like me to tell you about.
I think that's more. We can leave more. You can tell us more in the end of the. You can tell us more in the end of the interview, please.
Okay.
Right now, but I've asked you what's the best entrepreneur movies you have ever watched. So I have to ask you the opposite as well. What's the worst? Not just entrepreneurship. Not just about entrepreneurship, but what's the worst movie you have ever watched?
Well, before I answer that, I will say that a lot of people think it's a little odd that I have this combination of careers of being basically a corporate critic and a movie critic. But what I always say, before that I was in the government evaluating government programs. So basically I always say that what I'm always interested in is systems analysis. Everybody wants it to work. And if it doesn't work, it's interesting to think about why. In a corporation, you take Enron, for example, there wasn't anybody there that wanted the company to completely fall apart and bankrupt everybody, but it did. So why was that? And I just heard a very interesting speech from the former chief financial officer of Enron, who went to prison, and about how he thinks they got into such difficulty. And the same thing is true with a movie. A movie's got generally hundreds of people working on it, or dozens if it's a small independent film, and everybody wants it to work. And when it doesn't work, it's very, very interesting to think about why. And I would say that the movies that I dislike the most, that I really find excruciating to watch, are the ones where you can just tell that not one person had any kind of sense of authenticity about it, that their view on it was, well, I know this is a piece of trash, but you know, the great unwashed who buy movie tickets will be fine with it. So that's the kind of thing I don't like. And so the most recent terrible movie I saw, what a terrible idea. The son of the man who created the Muppets, those wonderful puppets that are on Sesame Street, has made an R-rated, filthy movie with the puppets called The Happy Time Murders. And it's not just that it's puppets doing filthy things, it's just that it's a really stupid movie. Because Team America World Police had puppets doing filthy things, and that was pretty funny. So it's just an awful movie. So that's the most recent bad movie I've seen.
One of the worst movies I've ever seen. It was a good movie, but when I found out the truth about it, I started to dislike the movie. It was a film about Al Capone. He's from Chicago.
Yeah.
He's
from Chicago.
He's from Chicago.
Yeah.
You're from Chicago.
I am from Chicago.
You must have Al Capone. But the movie about him was lies. Because
sure.
They made the cop look like the good guy, but really he's the one. He just made it all up. Really, he was an alcoholic, and he just made the movie was completely made up.
Well, that generally is the case. But I think a good movie about a real life entrepreneur is Joy with Jennifer Lawrence. The movie's not entirely successful. I think it makes a lot of mistakes, but it is a true story about a young woman who, with a great deal of courage and persistence and one idea that led to other ideas, invented something that became very successful. And so I think for an entrepreneur, that's a good story.
You know, a lot of the times, books are recommended for entrepreneurs to read and podcasts for entrepreneurs to listen to, but not many movies are hardly recommended for entrepreneurs. So you mentioned a few movies that you would recommend entrepreneurs to watch. Could you tell us a bit more, please? Because we are what we read, we are what we listen to, and we are what we see as well. So,
well, there are a lot of really good documentaries that I want to recommend. One is Inside Job about the financial meltdown, The Flaw, which is also about the financial meltdown. I think those are great. There's one called Enron, The Smartest Guys in the Room. And as I said, these are great cautionary tales. There's a documentary not many people know that I think is excellent about everything that can go wrong in a startup called startup.com. So I think that's...
I heard about that one, Startup. I've seen that. I haven't watched it.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I've seen clips. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah. They had a good idea, but
that's on my watch list. I think I've got a watch list.
Yeah, good.
That's on my watch list.
So they made a lot of mistakes. Tucker is a tragic entrepreneurial story about a true story about somebody who had a better idea, and was killed by the competition because
that happens as well. I've heard
it happens all the time, and
I've heard corporations send hitmen to kill the competition.
They do. I mean, I don't mean literal murder. I mean, paying off politicians, and there's a documentary called "Who Killed the Electric Car," which is another real life story about corporations. There's a really good documentary called "Hot Coffee," about basically corporate bad behavior, and another one called Dark Money. So I really think that documentaries are tremendously important to warn entrepreneurs about what to avoid. Now I'm going to give you an example that I think is going to surprise you. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. So many years ago, there was a documentary nominated for an Oscar. It's a great movie called Some Kind of Monster, about Metallica. You know Metallica?
No, I never heard of Metallica.
They're a very heavy metal rock group, sold more than 60 million.
Yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah, Metallica. Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely have. Yeah, I don't listen to the music, but I've heard of them. Yeah.
Okay, so my son is a big metalhead, so I decided, he was in college at the time, I decided I would take him with me to the movie. And so we went to lunch before. In fact, he's just finishing up a book about Metallica right now that'll be out next year. Anyway, so I said to him, so tell me a little bit about Metallica to prepare me for this movie. And so he could have been an oral exam for a PhD. I was absolutely astonished. It was, full paragraphs, perfectly organized. He just spilled out this fantastic history of heavy metal music. So we go to the movie, and one of the things that happens in the movie is that the band, which has had the same four people from the beginning, this, I'm sure you're familiar with this, is happening in the world of rock music, just like everywhere else. One of them gets unhappy, everybody's unhappy with everybody. So one of them left the band and they brought in a new guy. So they sit down with a new guy and they say to him with the lawyers, all right, here's how it's going to work. We are partners in this venture. You are a contract player. You are going to be on a salary. And the three original members of Metallica say, no, that's not how bands operate. He's going to be a full partner from day one. We're going to loan him the buy-in, and he's going to be a full partner. And I looked at my son and I said, well, you explained heavy metal to me. I'm now explaining corporate governance to you. That is corporate governance. And I think that's the kind of thing where, even though the movie is not specifically about entrepreneurship, believe me, there is nothing that is more small business than a musician. This is why musicians tend to be conservative politically, and movie stars tend to be liberal, because musicians are running a small business. And you really see that that's what this is during the course of this film, Some Kind of Monster. And you see also how businesses run. And they were 100% right to treat their new member that way. And it tells you everything about why they're so successful.
Sounds interesting. So Nell Minow, if anybody wanted to watch these movies you've recommended and these documentaries, where can they find them?
Well, they can find them on Netflix, on Amazon Prime, or on, if all else fails, go on eBay, and you can probably find a used copy somewhere.
What about moviemom.com?
Moviemom.com, I don't show movies, but you can certainly come there and see my reviews, see my interviews with movie stars and filmmakers. And
so you do interviews as well?
I do, yes. In fact, I interviewed Rupert Everett last week.
Awesome. Awesome. Have you interviewed Arnold Schwarzenegger yet?
I have. I have a picture of me with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'll email it to you.
That's awesome. So if anybody wants to listen to the interview with Arnold Schwarzenegger or any other celebrity, who else have you interviewed?
John Travolta.
John Travolta. Wow.
Yeah.
What about John Travolta's rival?
Drew Barrymore.
The guy in Face Off, with the guy in the movie Face Off.
Oh, Nicolas Cage. No, I have not.
Do you plan to interview him?
Not yet. Well, I would love to, but we'll see if he comes to Washington. But yes, I do quite enjoy talking to filmmakers. Although I, generally speaking, prefer to talk to the writers and directors even more than the stars.
Wow. So do you plan on making movies yourself, since you know so much about them?
No, I don't think so. I'd rather write about them than make them. But my daughter is a costume designer in Hollywood, so that's as close as I'm going to get to making movies.
Yeah, because when you wrote 35 books so far.
No, I've published 35 books. I've written.
Okay, you've published 35 books so far.
Yeah.
But those books, sometimes books are turned into movies.
Yeah, listen, a couple of the books I published would make great movies. I published a terrific book about the first Black woman pilot, who was also the first Black pilot in the world. And she had an amazing, very exciting life, and that would be a great movie.
Who's that? Who's that one?
Her name is Bessie Coleman.
Okay, what year was that?
That was way back. That was, around the Amelia Earhart days. So that was in the 1920s.
Oh, that was real early.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. So Nell Minow, really, really enjoyed this interview. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us before we end the interview, please?
That's just a total pleasure. Anybody that wants to get in touch with me and ask me more questions about corporate governance or movies can write to me at moviemom@moviemom.com. And that's movie mom, M-O-M, like American, not movie mom.
Okay, that's awesome. And I would like to thank all the listeners for tuning in. If you know anybody that this interview will benefit, please share it with them. Please also let me know what you think in the comment section and subscribe. And I'm Jamil Jama, and this is The Law of Business, and that was Nell Minow's interview. Thank you all very much for listening.